It's still on my end saying setting up. Okay, Mayor, I think we're good.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the Owl Palms Virtual Special City Council meeting. Today is Friday, May 8th, 2020 at approximately 2 p.m. This meeting is virtual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. You are hopefully watching this live on YouTube, and or if you miss it, you can go back and watch it. One may also submit comments by visiting the city website, www.iop.net/public-comment-form. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Both the press and the public were duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. City Clerk Nicole, please call roll call.
Can't hear you, Nicole.
I think Nicole may be frozen. I can go ahead and call roll call.
She's moving. She's just muted.
Yeah, she's muted.
Nicole, do you want to try now?
No.
I'll go ahead and call roll call, Mayor. Councilmember Moy,
Here.
Councilmember Pounds,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Streetman,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Popson,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules of order and at this time to amend the agenda to discuss the Keep It Moving Ordinance 2020-03 made on April 20th. In my understanding, we have a 2/3 majority vote to put anything on the agenda. That's what I'm trying to do, put this on the agenda to be dealt with right now.
I second that.
Okay, Councilman Ward, did you mean to say that you want this to be put on the agenda after our discussions? Or you want?
No, we're gonna only put it on the agenda so I can make a motion, then we can discuss it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Nicole, are you back? Okay, I'll go ahead. The motion from Councilmember Ward is to add an item to the agenda to discuss the current Keep It Moving policy. And that motion was seconded by Councilmember Streetman. Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Abstain. Do I need to
Councilmem-
clarify?
Yeah, you have to have a reason to abstain.
It has come to my attention that the keep in motion ordinance affects my family business.
Okay, Councilmember Smith, we will need to add a recusal form to the record, so I will provide that to you after the meeting.
Okay.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
the motion passes 8-0.
Streetman didn't vote, but aye.
Oh, Councilmember Streetman. I'm new to this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to rescind the requirement that those on the beach be in constant movement and eliminate the regulation that the beach is open for exercise only.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do I hear discussion? Please, Councilmember Moy.
Yes, sir. And Chief, I'm gonna throw a question your way. The entire, well, at least from my perspective, the entire reason I have supported the Keep It in Motion is because our public safety officials have said that's the way they feel they can best manage these social distancing guidelines. So I'm in full support of what the chief and his team think is going to be the most easiest way for us to keep the beaches safe. So I know we've gotten a lot of requests from folks asking us to remove the Keep It in Motion. And oddly, some people have cited that we're making it harder on public safety, even though that's not what we've heard to date, at least. So Chief, I'd ask you, has anything changed? Have we learned anything? Or do you have any specific recommendations on how we manage to keep it in motion?
Excuse me, I just need to do some housekeeping. Please excuse me, John and Chief, but I needed to add a statement of indigent circumstances, and that is a health crisis and ability to enforce. That needs to be put in at this time before we discuss any further. Thank you.
Do we need a second on that?
I would say.
No, it's just a statement about it.
All right. Chief?
To answer it, so what we've noticed is most of the individuals that have attended the beach have done a very good job at practicing social distancing. Where it's challenging for us is when we come across somebody. I came across an individual sitting in a chair and she was 100 yards away from anybody else. And I had to tell her, hey, you got to get up and move. And that's where it's an issue. I did speak with our prosecutor, and he had a little bit of a concern with the Keep It Moving, trying to prosecute that charge in our courts. And so really what we've seen this week out on the beach, I don't think that the Keep It Moving has been in anything that would have changed the ability for us to enforce social distancing or not. Everybody's really out there doing the social distancing. Now, I'll caveat that with saying we have not had the large crowds that we thought we were going to get this week. So what we have seen is that social distancing has taken place, whether they were seated, laying out, or continuing to walk. So at this point, it's not been an issue at all.
Thank you. Any other questions, please?
Just a comment, Jimmy.
Well,
I mean, and I think the reason Councilman Ward brought this up is it is unimaginable to have short-term rentals. And, you know, I can tell you, I don't have little kids anymore, but I have 4 grandkids. I can't imagine defining keeping it moving with kids on the beach at the same time we're entertaining rental. I mean, we're either in or we're not. And for those that still have young kids, like Councilman Moy, you know, we've got to be reasonable to a point. I don't even know how to define keep it moving. You know, you got 4 kids running around in the water. You've got a mother standing nearby doing jumping jacks. You know, we've got to at some point put some common sense behind it and say, if we're going to do short-term rentals, you know, we've just declared that basically we're open for business.
thank you, sir. Any other council members? Councilman Streetman?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that a little bit. I've had, as all of council, we've had numerous emails and requests from people, citizens, and short-term renters, future short-term renters that would like to see that removed. But it's overwhelmingly the contact I've had, whether it be neighbors, friends, anybody on this island. I know that there are some exceptions to that, but most people are really disturbed by that part of the keep moving ordinance, that they can't go out with a beach chair, sit there and or do a little sunbathing. And I think it's just time, because it has been demonstrated to us, as the chief said, that so far that's not been a problem with social distancing. And I think, quite honestly, I think people now are just conditioned to want to do the social distancing. So Now, will we have some issues? Possibly. I mean, because there might be groups of people that at some point break that rule, and that will be up to the chief and his team to enforce that. So I'm definitely in favor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Councilman Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Councilman Bell that this is a common sense thing to do. So I think we need to get rid of the keep the moving.
Anyone else? Councilmember Buchanan.
Thanks, Mayor. I think one of the biggest concerns when I voted against the keep it moving last time was the difference between private property and public property and the difficulties in enforcing people sitting on their private property up near their dunes and the high, away from the high water mark. But I think this is a great step for the citizens, the residents, even some of the elderly and folks with kids to get out and enjoy the beach and at a safe distance.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I have one comment. So the ordinance that was adopted by council that implemented a beach is open for exercise only policy, which is also being referred as the keep it moving, also included a prohibition of groups of more than 3 people. Currently, that is still part of the governor's executive order prohibiting any gatherings of more than 3 unless they're members of the same family. So I would like to get some clarity if we are keeping that prohibition on gatherings of groups of more than 3.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
So as Desiree just said, like we've got restaurants that are allowed to have up to 8 people sitting at a table with 6-foot distance. Would that same apply to the beach?
No, sir. And we actually have already discussed the governor's order for the restaurant. The wording within it, we're not even able to enforce that necessarily where he's got the 8 people at a table because of the word should inside the executive order instead of a shall. And something that simple makes it to where we can't even enforce that governor's order. So we would still stick with, right now, we're stuck with the 3 individuals. And I've seen people on the beach throughout the last couple of days that were very creative in following that social distancing, where you could tell they were together, but they were spread apart so that they weren't together. I can't say enough how impressed I've been with the people that have come to our beaches and followed all the rules. I'm very impressed with them.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Moy.
Thank you, sir. And I'll say a couple of things for the record. First of all, from the get-go, all of us want to get back to normal. So to suggest that anybody here doesn't want to get back to it is ludicrous. So I'm not expressing anything other than my desire to get back to being able to go to the beach. And as Councilmember Bell says, I've got a young child, and keep it moving makes it basically impossible for me to go. So as an individual, I absolutely want to be able to go out and hang out on the beach.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Sorry, I want to ask the chief one more thing, because we're making incremental steps to get back to normal. And it sounds like, and I hope I'm hearing correctly, that he feels that this is the right time. But I do want to just double check that, because we're coming up on what is historically one of our busiest weekends. So while so far we've been very what the people on the beach are doing, and I'm so glad to hear that, and I'm very encouraged. I want to make sure that, Chief, you feel comfortable. Yeah, and I think that's what you said. I just want to double check. We feel good with our police force. We're going to be able to enforce the social distancing, and the keep it moving is no longer necessary, which is what I want to hear, just to be clear. But if that's not the case, I want to give you the opportunity to say, maybe this isn't the best day. Maybe Monday is the best day. I don't know. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I want to get rid of keep it moving. I know the public does. I know that my fellow council members do, but we want to do it smartly.
I would say yes. We are in a position where doing away with keep it moving ordinance could be done away with, and we could strictly enforce the social distancing. We just want to make sure that the ordinance clarifies what social distancing number we're targeting here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nicole, you back online now? Nope. Okay. Back to our motion. Desiree, would you please repeat it so we can, and then do a roll call?
Yes, but I do have one question. I don't think that there was
Okay.
no discussion on the groups of people that are still allowed to gather together on the beach. Currently, the ordinance prohibits any groupings of more than 3 people, unless they're members from the same family who live under the same household. That is consistent with the executive order from the governor. Is the intent that we eliminate that from the city's emergency ordinance, or just eliminate the keep it moving and maintain a prohibition on gatherings of more than 3?
Mr. Mayor, if I might,
Absolutely, sir.
I think that's the idea is, I mean, we want to get rid of the keep it moving prohibition. But I think no matter what, we're still obligated to enforce the governor's mandate, whether it's with this or not. It's already in our executive order, but I don't think it needs to be part of the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Pounds.
Sorry, Mayor, real quick. So when would this be effective? Are we saying today? Or as soon as administratively feasible, I guess, because we have signage we need to take down, obviously.
That's up to.
I don't see why we couldn't make it. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I don't see why we couldn't make it immediately. And I have to recuse myself from the second half of this meeting anyhow. I'll go start taking down signs myself.
Yeah, I would agree, Ryan. Not the recusal part, just taking.
No, that you're taking down signs.
Yeah, effective immediately, I think works great.
Yes.
Does that need to be made in the form of an amendment to the motion, or we
It
just?
could be a friendly.
I think
it could be a friendly amendment unless there is any.
Yeah. It was a part of the original motion that Jimmy made.
Okay, so it's a friendly amendment for being immediately starting tomorrow, and Ryan's going to take signs down this afternoon.
Right. Start immediately means starts immediately.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
All right, everybody shake their head, give us a thumbs up, if you agree.
Right.
There we go, everybody, there we go. Thank you. All right, now, for vote.
Okay, so I will restate the motion for the record. So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
motion was to remove the keep it moving policy from the emergency ordinance and effective immediately.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson. Oh, he's muted.
Thumbs up.
Councilmember Popson?
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Ward?
Aye, but I've been trying to ask a question for 5 minutes. Nobody.
Oh,
Jimmy, we only see your head, so please raise your hand so we can ask a question, please. Since we're already in the middle of the vote.
Well, no, it's too late now.
Okay.
We're in the middle of the vote. But I'll ask it after the vote.
Okay.
Back to our vote.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
and Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay,
You forgot Streetman again. I'm an aye.
Oh. Councilmember
You know what?
Streetman.
I haven't been on council long, but I didn't know.
I'm sorry.
Get kicked off this soon.
It's just the way
Mr. Mayor, I have a
that
question.
we love you, Rusty.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ward, please.
I was trying to get this out before the vote. But how are we going to explain to people that you can go to a restaurant, to your point, Mr. Mayor, you have 8 people at a table, but you go to the beach and you can only have 3 groups of 3 or more. It's 3 or less. It's inconsistent. I know it's 3 or less with the exception of family members, but it's just, I don't know if we can make a motion or whatever, but it's inconsistent treatment.
And that might be Mr. Mayor, if I might. And that might be, we might have to call on Julia for this because it's the 3 or less as part of the governor's order. And we have to enforce the governor's mandate. While there's a bunch of things that don't make sense, and I agree with you, Jimmy, I don't understand it either. But right now it's the governor's order specifically says, you know, no more groups, no groups of 3 or more or less. And the restaurant, like the chief had mentioned, is basically they're urging them to follow those guidelines.
Okay, well, that's an explanation that I can use. So I appreciate that, Ryan. But you know, we're gonna get that question.
Correct. And it doesn't make sense. And I have a feeling the governor's going to come out here soon and start making amendments to a lot of his executive orders this week.
I understand. All right.
As we heard our chief say, there's a lot of creativity out there on the beach.
Okay, I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Could we just adjust to defer to what the governor's guidelines are so that we don't have to officially go backtrack once he changes?
So if you, Desiree, if Councilmember Smith is recused, can she ask questions on this?
I can't talk on the keep it motion, but I think I can talk on the other, everything else.
I'm just clarifying to make sure we do everything right.
Sir.
Yeah, I mean, her question was not related to the issue that she's in recusing herself from.
Okay.
Jimmy, just real quick to Councilmember Smith's point, given that we don't necessarily agree with the clarity around the governor's orders, I think we'd all be pretty uncomfortable saying that whatever he says the next go around that we would want to agree to automatically.
Okay.
That would be very difficult.
I got you.
Thank you all very much. Moving on, we're going to have Douglas give us a rundown on the short-term rental. But before we do that, Douglas, how many surfboard fins do you have behind you?
Quite a collection. Got to keep you busy.
I want to make sure you beat Randy in the guitars.
I don't have any more money for guitars. You're okay.
All right, Douglas. I'm sorry.
Surfboard fins are cheap, Randy.
I love a smile.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everybody has received the task force recommendations, and I will just kind of summarize, if I could, what those recommendations are and quickly kind of how they got to them. We have Sandy Stone on the call as well, who was instrumental in providing some data and some backup information on that really kind of form the basis of what their decision making was, so we can get him to speak on some of these matters as we need. But the task force was formed. It was a cross section of property managers, property owners, health care professionals, and the staff. We basically compiled what other cities are doing and what other guidance was out there in terms of accommodations and short-term rentals. They looked at those, they talked about those. They spent a great deal of time focusing on the ideas of a kind of phased opening, or Folly Beach is calling it a soft opening, whereby a city would either limit the duration of the stay or require empty days between stays or reduce the occupancy in some of these rentals. So that was a point of a lot of discussion. After a lot of dialogue back and forth, the task force really felt that, and again, kind of going to some of the data that was presented, that the tools that are already in place are having a very strong effect on reducing the demand to come to the beach. Basically, if all restrictions were removed, none of the managers felt like we would be anywhere close to full occupancy for a long time, maybe up to a year. Their indications are that we probably will be somewhere in the vicinity of 30% occupied or 30% of what we were last time, not even occupied, but 30% of where we were last year at the same time for the month of May, and potentially 50% for the month of June. So really, no matter what the city does, just people being afraid to come to the beach is going to have the effect of limiting activity at these short-term rentals. And I will say that was a real, that was a strong point in shaping their recommendations. So they are not, you'll see in their recommendations, they are not suggesting that there be limitations in place that would limit occupancy or the duration of the stay. Having said that, there are a lot of recommendations here that focus on proper sanitation, proper hygiene, training, and really getting out information to those managers and to those guests that they will find useful in implementing to hopefully keep everybody safe from the spread of COVID. That is, that's kind of a synopsis of what their position is going to be. I'll just spend, I'm not going to go into every word of it, but I'll spend a couple of minutes going into the details of their recommendation. First is notification and signage. They are recommending that every short-term rental and every hotel, property manager's office, and other places of check-in have signs posted explaining the expectation for guests. Things like if you're already feeling ill, you shouldn't come in to any of these establishments. Maintain proper social distancing, maintain proper hygiene, wear a face mask, facial covering, and keep hand sanitizer with you at all times. So those signs would be up at really all places associated with short-term rentals. Next set of recommendations, we'll get into this cleaning procedures. The expectation there would be that every short-term rental, condo, hotel, or other accommodation business would create a list of high-touch surfaces, things like elevator shaft buttons, remote controls, doorknobs, handrails, things of that nature that are going to be touched a lot, and that those surfaces be disinfected really as frequently as possible, depending on what it is. A short-term rental, it's obviously not possible to get in there daily, but at least between tenants, and in hotels, it should be more frequent. Also, every accommodation would be expected to maintain a logbook of when their cleaning is occurring. There would be a requirement that all cleaning staff wear proper protective measures. A requirement that the staff be given the proper tools to do the cleaning, and a requirement that all linens, towels, laundry is clean in accordance with the CDC guidelines, which would include cleaning those with as hot a water as possible. The next set of standards gets into very kind of general good practices, things like ensuring that adequate air circulation is available, ensuring that front desks and check-in areas are arranged with putting people not any closer than 6 feet apart, having employees wear masks as they check in, having packets pre-assembled so that there is not, so that you can limit the amount of time and the amount of passing back and forth between a guest and employee, sanitizing keys, plastic cards, training all employees, each manager, all hotel employees, all cleaning staff should be trained on the proper CDC guidelines. Their recommendation includes provisions on case notifications that would say in the event that a guest has tested positive, that manager or rental owner should notify the proper authorities. They've provided a room recovery protocol that basically would ensure that any accommodation that had a guest that is tested positive would be sanitized, and that room would be quarantined until it has had a enhanced cleaning and disinfecting in accordance with the EPA standards and using EPA approved products. And then enforcement, there was a lot of discussion on how this might get enforced. And the way it's being recommended, there would be, all of these would carry a punishment of a disorderly conduct charge. However, the standard is written in such a way that if someone can show an undue hardship, there's a lot of examples of things like hand sanitizer being unavailable. Things get sold out. Bleach wipes apparently are basically unavailable at this time in large quantities. So there's an undue hardship kind of exception if somebody can show undue hardship. There's also an exception for things that are outside of the manager or the owner's control. Things like controlling a guest. If a guest does something, removes hand sanitizer, or does something, removes a sign, they didn't think it would be fair to hold the manager responsible for that. So there is an enforcement provision in there, but I would say that there are several caveats that would clarify that a manager would not be charged in those events. And then finally, the duration. The task force felt that 61 days, which is the standard duration of an emergency ordinance, would line up well with what they think would be a reasonable time frame to have these in place. And obviously, if after 61 days there was a need to extend that duration, they understand that it could be revisited. So that is a synopsis of what their recommendations are. I'd be happy to answer questions. And like I said, we also have Sandy on the call if you'd like more detail on the data of what they're seeing.
Desiree. Can you read my lips?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so should we go through our council members per expert? We have Douglas, we have Sandy Stone, Island Realty, and we have Dr. Edward O'Brien with us. Should we go through one at a time with our council members asking each of these experts the questions?
Sure, unless Sandy Stone, is there anything that you would like to add to what Douglas presented to council? No? Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Mayor, I think you could go one by one and give him an opportunity to discuss and ask questions.
I'm going back to our alphabetical order. And Dr. O'Brien, please, number one, I feel like you're one of our council members nowadays, but we'll come back to you, but I want you to hear these questions. Council Member Bell, questions?
Not so much questions, maybe one question of Sandy. I think we all started from the beginning saying we really had two levers. One was closing the beach in its entirety and one was maintaining a checkpoint. So from my personal perspective, when you've opened those, there's no inherent greater risk just with rental properties probably than there is in having open access to the island. But I do have a question of Sandy. Are the rental property owners intending to have waivers signed? Ironically, I launched a boat from a marina yesterday, had to sign a COVID waiver to launch a boat. And I think, the waiver question plays both into the rental properties themselves and probably affords the city some position, although I don't think we have a lot of legal culpability here. but probably does make sense across the board that people are recognizing readily that they are taking a personal and family risk.
Good question.
Great question. And what I am hearing from my members of the Vacation Rental Managers Association across the country is that nobody is asking for that sign off of their guests, either from the management company or from owners. I don't, kind of putting the onus, it's always been there for you, and to, if you're willing to take the risk, it's understood that you're taking the risk without signing off and saying I'm taking the risk. I hope that helps answer.
No, it's fine. I was just, some curiosity.
We do intend to disclose somewhat through the guidance that these documents say certain things to guests when they check in that will make them aware that, don't know if you heard, but there is a pandemic. So yes, there will be some disclosures going forward. There'll be signage per the guidance that we've put together here, the guidelines. I think that pretty much will cover it. And I guess if someone's been in a cave for the last couple of months, that hopefully will help.
We all have. Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Buchanan, I think, has left the conversation because he was recused. Councilmember Moy.
Yep, thank you. And I would like to express my appreciation to Sandy and Douglas and everyone else on the task force. Like three meetings. And I know 2 meetings. Well, 3 for Sandy because he's here today. But all of the thoughtfulness that went into it, and by all accounts, very productive, collegial, everyone working towards the same goal. So appreciate that. Thank you. These all look pretty straightforward and clear to me. I'll be interested to hear if Dr. O'Brien has any other considerations that I'm missing. The only thing that I have a question about is less of a concern, but the item C, each short-term rental and accommodation shall ensure adequate air circulation. It just feels pretty vague and broad to me. So is there an industry definition of air circulation that I'm unaware of, or why? It's kind of like, why include it if it's not understood what it is?
So John, I would answer that to just say that came from the city of Myrtle Beach, that provision. It was in their standard, and we kind of jokingly said if any of these rentals are not allowing for adequate air circulation, nobody's coming anyway. So we understood the importance of having the air circulation, but we felt like it was going to happen either one way or the other, so we left it in there. Okay. I certainly don't think if you take that out, air circulation is going to become limited. So I don't think there's any harm in taking it out, but at the same time, I don't think we felt like there was any damage in leaving it in.
Fair enough.
That's it?
No, excellent work. Thanks to the task force.
Thank you. Councilmember Popson.
Really no questions, but I also just want to thank the staff and Douglas, his leadership, taking the lead on this, and Sandy and the fellow task force members for moving so quickly and putting in the effort to get this done. It seems like the guidelines cover all the areas that needed to be covered. So I really didn't have any other questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Pounds.
Just one quick one, Mayor. Douglas, similar to the Keep It Moving, what was the discussion around effective date? Were we going with our ordinance that's ending on the 12th or something before that? Just curious.
So the intention is for it to become effective immediately and last for 61 days. And quite frankly, there was a lot of dialogue about when it should become effective. The task force agreed that, if you made it effective today, which I think they hope that you would, I don't think any of them will have bookings for at least a few days. They all indicated that they could fairly quickly be ready, but nobody on the task force would have a booking this weekend. So again, it would kind of be, it would already be self-limiting in the fact that they don't have the booking today. They're probably not gonna have people showing up tomorrow.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And thank you, Douglas, for the quick write-up. I know y'all spent a lot of time in meetings this week, so appreciate you doing that. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. And is this our opportunity to hear from Dr. O'Brien? Is that, or was that going to come later, or should we be directing questions to him now?
You can ask him questions and we're going to ask him to speak after this too.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'll just chime in on thanking the city staff and the leaders we have a lot of industry leaders on Isle of Palms, and think that they did a lot of thoughtful discussion, and I was able to listen to almost all of it. So thank you very much for all that. I appreciate all the work that went into that in a short period. And the benefit for us, if we maintain a solid reputation for high standard of cleanliness, I think we'll have long-term benefits. I have a question. I happened to notice that there wasn't anything as far as the cleaners themselves having to wear masks. I know that that's a point of conversation. Did that come up? And maybe Dr. O'Brien can speak to whether that, the omission of that, if that's a point of concern.
Number two.
Dr. Bryan, would you like to chime in on that?
Sure. I mean, I think we would recommend proper PPE for the cleaning crews. Mask would be recommended. That is true. I wasn't on that aspect of the form, so I'll see what Douglas or Sandy has to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, anything else?
Maybe if Douglas and Sandy could address whether that was a point of discussion at any point along the way, or what you were drawing from. Is that not part of the CDC guidelines?
Susan, I can tell you that I don't think that the task force would have necessarily objected to that. I can tell you that it wasn't a topic of great discussion where they decided against that. There was a little bit of a discussion about, that putting in so much about companies that they may not all have control over. That a manager that typically, Sandy's an exception, but typically these companies outsource, and they might have a challenge in dictating what those outsourced companies do. But I would say, I don't know that there would be any heartache with putting that in necessarily.
All right. I mean, I'd like to hear Sandy's thoughts if he has anything specific on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's an intentional dodge. And quite frankly, when I read 2A1E, it says, wear a face mask or other facial covering in accordance with state requirements. Quite frankly, I think I very generally assumed that was part of the cleaning procedure too, while it isn't under D, the cleaning procedure, where it specifically says under 3, require cleaning employees to wear gloves, clean surfaces with soap, water, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I think that was kind of to a specific task. I do not believe anyone in our group would be opposed to adding wear gloves and face mask when available to a cleaning procedure. Most employers will, to protect themselves and their staff from any exposure. So I would volunteer that, Douglas, to, I don't think anybody will object to that.
Okay, great. Thank you for addressing that. And it may seem like common sense, but maybe it needs to be pointed out, it just with the language as recommended. I want to make sure that everybody, the cleaners themselves, are also protected in this process, whether they be the property owner or somebody who's working for the property owner. And otherwise, just thank you for all of the work that went into that.
Okay, Councilman Streetman, I'm not going to leave you out.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to direct my comments at this point to Douglas and Sandy and those on the task force that did the yeoman's work on this. I had an opportunity to listen to part of their meeting yesterday, I guess probably the last half anyway, and had a chance to look over the materials and read through those very thoroughly. And I think you've done a great job of putting together some real common sense guidelines here that line up with CDC and some of the best practices out there. Sandy, I'm really encouraged that you and the other members of the task force have reached out to other areas of the country and some of your colleagues and gotten information from them as to what they're doing in different municipalities. And I think it's worked real well done, quite honestly. And let's keep in mind too that, and I've had conversations with Sandy about this in the past too. These rental agencies, they have everything to lose if they don't do it right. I mean, they're in business, renting these homes, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, or whatever, and the owners that rent the homes themselves. If they, don't follow a set of guidelines and something happens, and it's just going to be their reputation that gets besmirched for some reason. And they don't want that. I mean, they're all professionals, have been in business for a long time. And even though there's possibly going to be one-offs from time to time that cause for concern, they have to be the ones that police themselves in this. And I think they'll do an excellent job of doing that based on what I've heard and seen. And again, I appreciate the guidelines here that you all recommended. So Sandy, Douglas, and team, job well done. And with Dr. O'Brien, happy to have him back here again, but I will defer any questions to him after we've had an update from him. Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ward.
Mayor, if I may, I don't mean to interrupt, but Dr. O'Brien has to leave around 3. So we have a couple minutes and he requested to make a statement before he leaves the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely, because his time is very valuable. Dr. O'Brien.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me back. I apologize, I had to miss last time. We were working on something with MUSC here that I think makes a lot of sense. I've read through the rental regulations, and I think they're very good. They're nice and broad. They do encompass a lot of the general recommendations, CDC guidelines. I think what we've noticed in businesses, and we're working with several municipalities, is that those guidelines are great, but a lot of businesses want to know how to put those in place, right? So the CDC guidelines, the state guidelines, county guidelines, municipal guidelines are all broad. But how do businesses take those and put them into actual actionable steps to keep their employees and their customers safe? So we do have a program now that I've been developing with MUSC, with all our public health experts, that we can help any short-term rental company who wants it, or any company on Isle of Palms. Basically what we would do is we would come in and do actual walkthroughs of companies. So I know one of the council members mentioned the cleaning crews. So we could actually walk through a cleaning process with one of the different cleaning crews and see, what they're doing, give them concepts to use. Bleach alternatives, for example, if someone said there were no Clorox wipes available. So we walk through front to back. We do this for restaurants. We do it for municipalities. We do it for resorts, hotels, retail businesses. And it basically is just contacting an MUSC public health team. We send our team through. We make workflows for clients, workflows for the employees, make sure every place that they touch or feel like they're going to be in communication with is working effectively, and put in proper practices on a step-by-step basis, and give each business a playbook, and then arrange expedited testing for each business should they desire that. I just wanted to offer that out there. I know a municipality like Isle of Palms might not be able to, require everybody to do something like that, but we've noticed some municipalities putting grants together because this is not something MUSC is trying to make a bunch of money on. We're just trying to do it as a public health service. So all we're trying to do is cover our own, our own staff costs. That's it. So it's low cost wise, and this is not a plug for that. This is just, we want to do what's right and offer you guys another alternative. So I can answer a couple questions about that and how it might help the rentals.
Okay, question for Dr. O'Brien. While we just start with Councilmember Ward, since we missed him on the last one. Councilmember Ward,
Yes,
O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. Thank you, Dr. O'Brien, for that offer. That sounds something very interesting. And I would encourage the administrator to follow up on that for more information. And thank you for being steadfast in helping us out on these past couple of months. It's been invaluable and we really appreciate it. I'd like to just echo Rusty's comments that these real estate companies, they're professionals and they know what they have to do. This is how they put food on the table. They have to have professional standards. And so I know they have procedures in place to make sure that they're offering the highest quality product, the safest and cleanest out there, because they're in competition with so many other communities. I just wanted to thank Sandy and Douglas and the rest of the task force for putting this this program together so quickly and so thoroughly. And that's all my comments.
Councilmember Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. O'Brien, again, I just want to echo what everybody's been saying. We really appreciate your input and your guidance and advice during all of this. You've been a great resource for us, and we really certainly genuinely appreciate it. The only question I have is, I did see that we had somewhat of a spike in COVID cases yesterday throughout the state, and even in Charleston County. Any thoughts on that as to why that spiked? I mean, I know it's a daily thing, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. Honestly, my short-term thoughts on that are that we're really ramping up nursing home testing. And I think you're going to see a decent amount of spike with that patient population. DHEC just announced, and we've already been doing it ourselves, testing whole groups of nursing homes and senior living facilities. So I think that's probably what that spike's related to.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate that. And again, thank you very much for your advice. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. Well, first for Dr. O'Brien, you've mentioned, I think previously, that looking at hospitalization rates might be the truer indicator for making decisions. And would you agree that that's true as a better indicator of where we are?
I'm sorry, hospital admissions versus number of new cases?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a better indicator of severity of illness for sure.
Okay. And as far as we have previously discussed the breathing room issue, I feel like the information that I'm hearing suggests that that may not be as much of a need if there's proper cleaning. Would you agree? Does MUSC have any official recommendation around that? Or is there any recommendation for at least a short period before a cleaning crew goes into a unit?
No specific recommendation. You just have to make sure the cleaning crew has adequate time to clean all the surfaces with the proper disinfectant material.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. That's very interesting. I would also think that we should be exploring the possibility of making what MUSC has available accessible for our businesses.
Thank you. Councilmember Pounds.
No additional questions, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. O'Brien, for joining us again.
Thank you. Councilmember Popson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. O'Brien, thanks for all the time and the comments and the discussions over all these meetings and for answering a ton of questions from us all. So I'm not going to add to that list, and so I do not have any questions at this time. Thanks again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Moy.
Also good. No question.
Councilmember Bell. Randy?
No, just a thank you to Dr. O'Brien. I don't have any further questions either.
Okay, if you don't mind, I didn't ask any questions before. So from Dr. O'Brien, Sandy, and Douglas, you know, we've got a lot of companies out here that are on top of it, but we also have a small amount of people who rent their own 1 or 2 houses. Do we have a way that we can send this list of suggestions to all of our licensed vacation rental owners?
Yes, we do, and I was going to add just for a point of consideration that the task force had already spoken about disseminating the information to everybody about what's going on, and we had agreed to do that. We do have most of the email contacts, so we were going to do it via email. There could be some that we don't have email contact information for that we wouldn't be able to get in touch with. But just a thought, you know, when we send that information out, I think it would probably be wise, if everybody is agreeable, that we include information about Dr. O'Brien's, the service he just mentioned that MUSC would be willing to provide to him directly. So if there's no, if there's not an objection to that, I would suggest we put that into the outreach information that we post to all of the rental owners and managers.
Thank you very much. Desiree, would we need a motion for this to be tacked on to our vacation rentals as a suggestion?
Yes, it would be, we would need a motion from council implementing these recommendations as presented. I believe that there is one amendment that was agreed upon, adding to section B1, section B2, no, B3, requiring cleaning employees to wear gloves and face masks when available. So we can City Council can make a motion to implement those. In terms of the timeline, currently, the emergency ordinance prohibiting new checkings expire on May 12th. So if the will of the group is to maintain that date, then no further action is necessary. It would just expire on the 12th. But if council would like to rescind that prohibition before the 12th, then it would require action from council today.
But again, to clarify this, in order for us to add these, we do need a motion to add these to this, to the rental.
Correct.
All right. Do I hear?
I'll make a motion, Mayors.
And that's to add sanitary and hygiene measures as described for the last hour.
Correct.
Second. Second.
Okay, discussion.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
The suggestion on, available PPE, be them mask or whatever, there's going to be a lot of people that simply can't find them. Would that not be covered if you eliminated the wording for when available? I would think the same discussion we had about exigent circumstances, recognizing that people can't get much of this equipment. I prefer personally to not have the when available 2 words in there and just say they're required, understanding that there's going to be circumstances, particularly with the smaller cleaning companies, where they're simply not going to be able to get this equipment. And Sandy, you might have thoughts on that. I partially as a question. I don't know if you're able to get all of these supplies at this point.
Am I on?
Yes, sir.
So under statement 1, statement of purpose, number 1, the second paragraph does address that, if I understand what you're asking, Randy, is it, you know, with the exception of undue hardships,
Right.
which would be access to things, then you know, if we can't get face masks, this kind of reads in my mind that action requiring significant difficulty or expense, yeah, that you kind of get a buy on it.
Yeah, I mean, those two words become meaningless in that sentence when we've given a buy in the beginning on those. But I think the intent is to tell people we really want you to use these protective measures.
Agree.
Okay.
So how do you soften the requirement for face masks if
No,
there's
Sam, I'm not trying to soften it. I'm just saying we've already acknowledged that due to hardship, that some of these things might not be possible. I think when we send this out and others are reading it, I wouldn't want to put, you know, another soft clause in there that says, yeah, if you feel like it. The answer is we want you to use these things. If you want to revert back to that original language and say there's a hardship that prevents you, that's fine. But let's not take it a step further. Let's make a very firm directive that we expect people to do this. If there's a hardship, we recognize they may not be able to. Hopefully that made sense. I always make sense to myself.
Douglas?
Yes, I would agree with the notion that the undue hardship clause does already cover situations where items are not available. PE is not available. I don't think there's a need for any softening language other than that because it's already in there. So I would agree with
Thank you, Douglas.
Anyone else? Okay, are we ready to vote on this motion for adding the sanitation and hygiene measures?
One question, Mayor.
Okay.
Is this effective immediately?
Well, I guess depends if the 12th expires, May 12th. So this would be effective upon rentals starting. Is that correct, Julia?
Well, right now you've got short-term rentals, the prohibition ending on the 12th. If you guys want it to remain until the 12th, then yes, these safety procedures or protocols will go in place effective on the 12th. I think that's what you're asking me.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly.
Okay.
So I would say that the way this is drafted in the first words of the entire recommendation are effective immediately.
Right.
So it was certainly the intent that all of this would be effective today.
Okay. Clarified. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
If I may.
Of course you may.
The committee's expectation and hope was that this would be accepted as amended, however, and communicated as soon as possible to the parties that it affects. All of the owners need a copy of this, both to reinforce what the managers are doing, but also for them to prepare for an opening, a soft opening on effectively May 13th, if I'm not mistaken. Would this all expire midnight, May 12th? And so on the 13th, we can plan on business. And so this would already have been received and communicated, and owners are out there getting their supplies together, whether it's face masks, gloves, etc. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hey, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Sandy. I mean, all of these provisions can be made effective today, but I think we just let our ordinance expire and business is back open on the 13th. Personal opinion.
Okay. So all we're doing right now is doing for the sanitation and hygiene. We don't have to take any action on the May 12th deadline. If we take no action on that, it'll be business as usual after that date with these guidelines and in fact part of it. Councilmember.
Just a question on whether if by default, we're allowing the May 13th opening. Are the companies allowed to go ahead and take reservations, make reservations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So not to add any more confusion, but
Thank you, Douglas.
it was the intent of the group to rescind the 12th deadline and have these provisions be effective now. And so theoretically, if somebody could get a rental, and I think they're all indicating that they probably can't in real terms, but if they could get a rental tomorrow night, that they would be okay to do it as long as they've been able to implement all of these requirements before that time. That was their intent. I don't know that if in real practice, it makes much of a difference if your decision is for it to become effective on the 13th, but I think the wording of this document would need to be changed to not say effective immediately on today's date, just because I think we'd have conflicting documents out there. So I think the two documents, whatever date is chosen, should be aligned, and either the old document's rescinded and we go with the 8th, or this document is amended to read the 13th. But if you were to go forward as it is now, you'd be creating some confusion.
Sandy Stone, I'm going to refer back to you.
Yeah. No, makes perfect sense. I wasn't reading it that deeply. Thank you, Douglas. That's a great point. You can pass it effective of, 12/01, the 13th, and our point through the committee was to get it communicated as quickly as possible, to allow everybody some time to plan, to pull together their resources, to basically be open for business the morning of the 13th. So thank you.
Anyone else comment? Councilmember Popson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Sandy. Sandy, would it help? I know you have to have time to prepare, but do you think it would help you and your fellow property managers and property owners to take action today on the short-term rentals, lifting the restrictions immediately?
As I sat here and talked and heard what y'all are saying and what others are saying, there are those that are probably watching this going, what the heck are you doing, Sandy? Let's open it today. So to your point, there's some mom and pop owners that maybe are ready to go. So Kevin, yes, I would say if that's the will of the group, I don't know that, we'll all have to do what we have to do to get ready to be where we need to be to accept guests, whatever day. So today is as good as the 13th. So yeah.
Because of the way you read the order is that you cannot start taking reservations until the 13th. If we acted today, you can at least start taking reservations. If I'm correct with that.
Take reservation.
Just a clarification. So you could take reservations for after the deadline. So you could take a reservation today for check-in May 13th.
Correct. Julia?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Desiree's spot on.
So all we have to do is vote on this right here. And as of the 13th, business as usual.
Yeah, you would be voting to accept the recommendations from the task force, which would become effective on May 13th, if that is the will of the group, to let the emergency ordinance expire on the 12th and then, business as usual on the 13th.
And as I talked to Sandy earlier today, he told me that really he needed time to get the information out. And I know most companies that I have dealt with over the years would need time to get the information and supplies out. So to me, it just makes common sense.
Agree.
Agreed.
Are we ready to vote? Can I have a thumbs up? Yes? All right. Roll call vote. Nicole, you able or? All right. Back to Desiree. And let's repeat the motion, please.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Pounds and seconded by Councilmember Streetman to accept the recommendations from the short-term rental and hotel task force effective on May 13th, 2020. And we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
okay, Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
and Councilmember Buchanan has recused himself. Motion passes, Mayor.
Up to the mayor.
Mayor Carroll.
Don't forget me, please. Jesse, now I know what it feels like.
The motion passes, Mayor.
All right, Desiree, I'm just giving you a hard time.
It is Friday afternoon. I'm tired. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we need no executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
Here we have a motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good afternoon.
Sandy, Douglas, thank y'all.